If you had asked me a year ago what I thought about Lamelo Ball as an NBA prospect, my answer likely wouldn't have been a kind one at all. Heck, maybe even just a few months ago, I still would have been very hesitant to consider him one of the best prospects in the 2020 NBA draft. I probably would have told you he was arrogant, overconfident, too flashy, and a bit of a diva with severe limitations in his ability to actually help a team win basketball games, rather than put together a mildly impressive highlight tape. And whether that would have been fair or not, that's what I would have said. And honestly, fairness in this situation is pretty irrelevant because that was the perception for a lot of people about Lamelo Ball. When it comes to the NBA draft, perception is everything. And for me, the perception of Lamelo Ball as a basketball prospect for the last couple of years has been a pretty negative one. But that may actually be starting to shift. You see, for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other people share this same view, I just kind of got exhausted by the whole Ball family charade. When Lonzo first came into the league, it was clear that he was a very good basketball player, and the whole Ball family thing was still relatively new, so it wasn't quite as annoying as it would get to eventually. But by the time Lavar Ball started pulling his kids out of high school and putting them on a pro team in Lithuania, I was pretty much done with the Ball family. I was willing to talk about Lonzo because he was clearly a very good basketball player and still a solid developing young player in the league. But other than Lonzo, I pretty much swore off talking about any member of the Ball family on this channel because I haven't talked about them other than Lonzo in 2.5 years. And I wasn't trying to make it a personal thing, it's just at a certain point when the gap between how much we should be talking about a basketball family and how much we actually are talking about them is as large as it was for the Ball family, I was just kind of over it. But today, I'm gonna do something that I never really thought that I would do, and that is advocate and make a case for Lamelo Ball as the first overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft. Now, to be clear, I'm not technically saying that I think that he should be the first pick. I'm just kind of making the case here. And first, I want to talk about the basketball stuff, and then I'll get to some of the off-the-court stuff afterwards. But really quickly, before we get started, if you're enjoying this type of content, then subscribing is a great way to keep up with the channel. And leaving a like rating is also a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content and helps the video out a ton as well. Okay, so the first thing that I think is really important to understand about LaMelo's game is that in sharp contrast to I feel like pretty much every other player in this draft class specifically, LaMelo has one elite NBA skill, and that is his passing and his passing vision. And really this seems like one of LaMelo's true natural talents is his vision as a passer. And it's a little bit strange because initially when we were introduced to him as a prospect, a lot of the perception around him was that he was a ball hog and he was going to be taking 40 footers from half court and all these things that generally you wouldn't associate with someone that has great passing vision. But as he has developed as a player in his now professional career, whether it be Lithuania or Australia, it's become clear that this guy can really pass the basketball and he can facilitate and he can play make at a pretty elite level at the levels that he has played at to this point. And if he can continue to develop that, then he can become a great playmaker at the NBA level. And that is something that we have seen similarly at different levels of basketball for Lonzo as well. It hasn't quite turned out the way that we had hoped it would at the NBA level, but many of those passing traits similar to Lonzo we do see in LaMelo, and maybe you could even argue they're even better with LaMelo. Now, to go along with that on the basketball side, is LaMelo has great size and along with that versatility as well. It's not like we're dealing with a 6'2", 6'3", combo guard that can pass and can score a little bit. This guy is a legit 6'7". He's gotten stronger and he's kind of grown into his body a little bit more as well. And he has great body control at that 6'7" frame, which allows him to be really versatile on both ends of the floor. And I think that's another huge positive for LaMelo. When you're talking about someone that has the size that he does, that can play on the ball as a playmaker or off the ball if he improves as a shooter and play on the wing or either guard spot, that is an incredibly valuable player to have in the modern NBA. And he's not going to be some sort of Luka Doncic type 6'7" wing playmaker. I've pretty much sworn off comparing any prospect moving forward to Luka, but there are some similar characteristics specifically in his ability to be a wing playmaker. Now defensively, there's an opportunity for LaMelo to make a big impact there as well, specifically because of his size and his athleticism. Now, whether or not he's going to take advantage of that opportunity, I think it's pretty unlikely. Typically, when you see players come in like this that have the offensive skills that Lamelo does, they generally don't become very good defensive players, or at least average ones at best. But just on paper, from a size, athleticism standpoint, he has an opportunity to make a pretty significant impact defensively as well as rebounding, which as a prospect, even though it's unlikely he's going to develop into that type of player, is at least a positive. And then the last part of this with the basketball stuff specifically that I think is really, really important is how generally weak this draft class is at the top. I think there's some okay depth within the top 10, but overall it's unclear who the best prospect in the class is. It's unclear, who could be a potential franchise altering guy at the top of this class. And I think that works really well in favor of Lamelo Ball as a potential number 1 overall pick, because you could argue that he has the highest ceiling of any prospect in this class with that passing vision, with his size, with some of the scoring instincts that he does display on occasion. When you're comparing him to someone like Anthony Edwards or any of the other top prospects in this class, it's pretty easy to convince yourself that maybe Lamelo Ball is the pick, not only because of who he is as a player now, but because of who he could turn into and how well it seems like he would fit the way basketball is played now, with that size, with that versatility, with his ability to potentially play well on both ends of the floor, and of course that passing vision that would work very well in the now up and down style that is the modern NBA. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some negatives here with Lamelo on the basketball side of things. Like I said, the defensive stuff and the rebounding stuff, everything outside of scoring and passing needs to be improved for him, and whether or not he is a true kind of point guard playmaker type is definitely unclear at this point. And it's still kind of unclear as well if the shooting stuff is going to translate. Certainly has plenty of confidence in that area of his game, but to be a consistent, really, really good NBA shooter is something that we're still kind of in wait and see mode on Lamelo. And really the only thing that I'm sure about with him is the fact that he is an incredible passer. Everything else is still question marks, and everything else is more about his ceiling and his upside than anything else at this point. Now, in terms of the off-the-court stuff, I think there are actually a good amount of positives here for Lamelo as well. And initially, you might have thought of them as negatives because it was such a weird path for him to get here. But I do think that it helps that he has been in at least somewhat of a professional environment up to this point. The Lithuania thing was weird, but in Australia, he's been living somewhat as a professional basketball player for a little while now, and I do think that can be a positive thing for him. He knows what it's like to focus on basketball as his job, for it to be part of his livelihood, for it to be something that is so central to his life as it would be as a NBA player, and I think that's a good thing. And then he obviously has the experience of his brother to draw on as well, in terms of knowing what to expect when he comes into the NBA. But more than any of those other things, I think it's also really important that he has shown the ability to deal with a spotlight, and a bigger spotlight than most prospects have to deal with at his age. And I think a lot of those negative things that I was feeling about Lamelo Ball initially had way more to do with his father than it did with him specifically. And I think you can actually kind of admire him for how well he has dealt with the situation publicly and privately with his dad and how everything's gone down. We haven't really had any huge issues with Lamelo, and I think that it would have been forgivable if we had. So his ability to deal with that spotlight is a huge positive for a guy that is going to have a lot of eyes on him no matter where he goes in the draft. But specifically, if you're taking him with the number 1 overall pick, you need to feel confident that he's going to be able to deal with all the things that come along with being the number 1 overall pick. And I think to this point, he's proven about as much as he can in that area to show that you should have confidence that he's going to be able to deal with that stuff. And then my last point here is really just about all of the combination of all these things, right? Like I said, the size, the versatility, the potential, the upside, the weaker draft class. In this kind of situation, if I'm in the front office, and obviously it's specific to individual teams, and if a team like the Warriors, for example, gets the first pick, I don't know if Lamelo is the right pick. If a team like the Timberwolves gets the first pick, I don't know if Lamelo is the right pick. But if we're just going in general, right, for any team, in this type of situation where the draft class appears to be pretty weak, I would rather just swing for the fences and try and pick a guy that I think has the most upside, that I think could be a potential franchise-altering player, rather than someone that I think is just going to be kind of an average to an above average NBA player. And maybe there's a prospect in this class that you're evaluating completely differently than you are for Lamelo, and you're thinking, hey, this is the guy that's the franchise altering player. This is the guy that has all the upside. And that's probably fair. But for me, when I'm looking at this class, I think Lamelo is the guy that if we're gonna get a multiple time All-NBA player out of this class, I would bet more on it being him than anybody else. Not that it's going to happen, not that I'm overly confident that it's going to happen, but when the draft class is this week, I would rather swing for the fences. And I think if you're looking for a swing for the fences type of pick, I don't think it gets much closer to that than Lamelo Ball in the 2020 NBA draft. So it's weird. I never thought I would be making this case, and I honestly didn't believe the hype of him being a legitimate top prospect in this draft up until a couple of months ago. But I think that it's real, I think that it's legitimate, and I think he has a real argument, as I've outlined in this video, to be the #1 pick in the 2020 NBA draft. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.